Please welcome our panelists for the evening. I'll start out with Kim Crawford, who is Executive Director of Allied Churches of Alamance County. We also have April Durr, who's Director of Community Impact for the United Way of Alamance County. We have Diane Davis, who's a resident of Burlington Housing. We have Tom Mould, who's Professor of Anthropology and Folklore at Elon University. Michelle Poole, who's Economic Program Services Manager for Department of Social Services, Alamance County. Nikki, Ratcliff, Program Services Director for Burlington Housing Authority. And Tracy, Salisbury, Executive Director of Open Door Clinic. Did I get it? Salisbury? I mispronounce lots of things. What happens when you grow up in Louisiana? Thanks to each of you for leading our conversation tonight. So I'd like to start out by playing a clip that really motivates why we're here and the broader project that brought this group of talented people forward. If you can play that first clip for us.
He works 24 hours a day, including Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever. He never stops. My kids had everything they wanted. I mean, we had 3 vehicles. We had a trailer. We rented a trailer. I mean, we didn't have to live off of food stamps or government until he got arrested, and I couldn't afford the rent, and I had to move where I was and come here to housing, and I lost everything.
I was a CNA from Moses County. First I went to White Oak Mine and worked there for 10 years. Then I left there and went part-time for White Oak for 7. Then I went to Greensboro for 20. And I had got really sick on the job. Had no idea they didn't have no idea what it was, but I went blind. And so while I was blind in the hospital, they had diagnosed me with type 2 diabetes. And the doctor had said that's probably where my eyesight I had lost my eyesight coming from the diabetes. And the doctor down there said that he would refer me to come out of my job and job disability. And it was devastating for me because I like to work with people. And then I didn't want to, at my age, I didn't want to be at home all the time, constantly, just being at home with nothing to do. So I was really upset and angry.
Yeah, it was, my son had got into some trouble and made some bad decisions. So they was going to take and put the kids in foster care. And it was 3 of them, and with foster care, they never keep 3 together. They'll separate them. So I said, no, that can't happen. And I took custody of them. And that was like 9 years ago now. And he's been in prison since. So I had bought a trailer and just could not afford it. So we wound up going into Burlington Housing. I put an application in with them and got accepted. And I raised over there. I was in Burlington Housing for 5.5 years.
Okay.
Well, I got married in 1984, and I was married for 15 years, and we split up, and then I got married in 2005, from 2005 to 2007. And like I said, that was a very abusive relationship, and I almost died on account of it, but yeah, from 2005 up to now, it's just been kind of hard me getting on my feet and being able to support myself, get employment, and such things like that. So that's what brings me here.
It all started with me becoming ill, having to go on disability. But before I get the disability, I am not working at all. I am needing assistance with my utility. So I'm reaching out to the community, so I didn't really know anything about where to go besides social services. And I found out about this agency called Alamance County Community Services. I went there and I was getting assistance with a utility bill. And the caseworker there, I told her the only thing that I really wanted was a job. I said, because being 55 at the time, I said, I am too old to have babies and too young to draw Social Security. So that is when I found out that seniors and disabled fall through the crack. They get left out. And so that was very disheartening, very disheartening.
So as our panelists return, I'll start out with one opening question to them, and then I'm basically going to turn the event over to the floor, and hopefully folks will come to the mic and ask some questions. So I'll start out with one fundamental questions to each of our panelists. Feel free to answer it in whatever order you feel comfortable. So the title of tonight is Re-envisioning Welfare in Alamance County. When we think of envisioning, we often think of that as a snapshot, a basic description that helps us make sense of the world. The basic images are important in how we make use of new information as it goes along. As we know,
I had a heart attack about 3 years.
I was just throwing my voice. As we know, the images of welfare often vary quite dramatically from person to person, usually quite controversially. So starting out, how would you describe your foundational image of welfare? In other words, what does welfare mean to you? Whoever wants to start.
I'll start. First of all, I looked up the definition of welfare, and in the dictionary it says receiving help to ensure health, happiness, and fortune not meaning wealth. So to me, welfare means helping other people survive. And at the Open Door Clinic, we treat a lot of uninsured patients that have worked all of their lives. They were laid off due to the economy and things like that. Personally, 15 years ago, I received public assistance. I went through a divorce, and I worked full-time. I was an office manager in a physician's office, and they did not offer affordable health care. And I realized that I could actually get health insurance for my son at the time that was 4 years old through social services. It was NC Health Choice. So until it was about 3 or 4 years later, when I went to work for Alamance Regional, then I was able to put my son on my insurance. So, you know, for me, public assistance and welfare is about helping others and just getting them through a time of difficulty in their life.
Thank you.
And I have the same basic thoughts about welfare. You know, to me, welfare is not a program. It's not a check. It's action. It's, you know, a community rallying around folks who need it, supporting them as they navigate their own success. You know, working with public housing families, oftentimes folks the providers want to turn the mirror on themselves as they define success, but we need to turn the mirror around and let folks see success in themselves and not as we dictate it.
So welfare to me, you don't know what someone is going through when they come into your office. They could have worked all their life. We're there to help people, not to judge people. We're there to help them become self-sufficient, so it's not a lifetime on the system.
So I came at this question as sort of a member of the general public and seeing welfare portrayed in the media and from neighbors, often well-meaning neighbors, with images that confirm a lot of stereotypes. The welfare queen being kind of a catchphrase that gets thrown around a lot. And what we found in this project after many years of talking to folks who are actually receiving public assistance and not this kind of boogeyman that was created sometimes in the media, is that the vast majority, 95% of the folks that we were working with are either employed, looking for work, disabled, or primary child caregivers. The numbers get a little squishy around the 95% point of discouraged workers, et cetera. The average number of children, 1 to 2, not this kind of perpetuated stereotype of so many children. And the average amount of time on TANF, not on food stamps, but on sort of what many people call welfare, is 3 years as an average, and 5 years, of course, there's a cap. So for me, welfare was all of these things in terms of having a really positive connotation. We talk about the welfare of our children, right? And that's really positive, but then you hear welfare as a social program, and it's often thrown around as a negative, but it's not for the folks that we talk to, the folks that many of the folks sitting up here work with every day. And so to me, that's the welfare that I hope we'll start to unpack a little bit tonight, and of course in the future.
You want me to go, or would you like
Sure,
to?
go ahead.
So, for me, I always am that person in the room, in the meeting, or in the community when folks say, those people over there, or they, I'm quick to correct folks and say, no, it's us, it's me, it's everyone. I mean, all of us, nothing is permanent. A situation could happen tomorrow, and that paycheck that I'm getting on the 15th, I could have to put towards that emergency, and I could be just, another person experiencing a hardship. Or in that same vein, nothing's permanent in that with the assistance that's available can turn something negative around into something positive and have the opportunity to help others and be engaged. So I often like to think of it as it's not those people over there or them, but it's all of us together working to solve community problems with the resources that we have, and nobody's immune to it, and it could happen to anyone. So that's my 2 cents. There you go, friend.
Thank you, friend. I'm kind of how I describe welfare now, or how I would like to see welfare, obviously are 2 different things. Welfare is used very much as a negative connotation. When I think of welfare, though, it is supposed to be about the well-being of our community, well-being of the members of our community. I think that once we get to that point, we decide who's deserving of well-being, who's deserving of a roof over their head, who's deserving of a job, who's deserving of whatever the case may be. And I don't think we should judge that any more than I lost the lottery last night, I mean, it's the same thing.
Me too.
I know we all lost. We're all sitting here.
Well, we all bought tickets.
But we all bought tickets, yeah. And so, but I think I deserve that too. But by the same token, welfare is building a community. And we can look at welfare as, those people like April talked about. Or we can look at welfare as building our community. And what kind of community do we really want to have? And do we want to have a thriving community? And I think that that's really where we really need to look. I mean, we could sit and look at the pictures and go, oh, okay, yeah, well, that person looks like they need welfare, or that person looks, of course they've got welfare, they'll look at them. And you can never tell, And more often than not, we've run into those experiences where we've met someone and they are completely different than what we thought. And I believe that welfare operates the same way, and I think that we get caught in that trap. And we really need to look at what is the good that we want for our community.
Well, thank you all. This is time where I turn things over to the audience if they have questions. I have a bunch of questions because there's some smart people up here I want to know a lot from. Oh, Diane, did you?
I just want to say, for me, it was to help me with a small child that I had in my home at the time, but not to stay on it permanently, just to get where I need to be.
Sorry, I lost track. Thought you had given us the answer already. Thank you. Do you have any questions from the audience? Start out. If not, I have a bunch more.
Don't be shy.
Feel free to come forward to the microphone. It should be on. If not, I'll hop down.
Thank you. Oh, it works.
It works.
It works. Thank you. My name is Amy Gailey. I'm a candidate for county commissioner, and I was listening to you folks talk, and it struck me that a lot of the presentation so far has talked about the people in Burlington, and I think it's important to remember that we have rural poor. There's poverty in the county as well. And I was wondering if y'all had any thoughts about the differences between the challenges facing the urban poor and the rural poor. And of course, to me, transportation comes up at the top of the list, and the higher gas prices are, the tougher it gets to be for people to get to where they, their jobs and to get to services and things like that. So I was wondering if y'all could talk about that. Thanks.
So, from a DSS perspective, living out in the rural areas, transportation is one of our biggest issues. Not only transportation, it's getting to food sources. If they're living way out of town, there's not your local grocery store out there. So, transportation, I believe, runs as a very high issue for those citizens.
And I would just add that that's also a big problem for the folks we talk to in Burlington. As we know, a bus route and bus system is coming online, but it's not there yet. And a number of folks have received jobs that were 2, 3, 4 miles away in town, but trying to bike or walk that route in inclement weather, et cetera, just became sometimes too much, especially if there was any kind of health issue that might make that kind of a walk a problem. So we're certainly hoping that the bus system helps us out there, but I think that's been a problem in both rural and urban settings here.
So I'll just add to that. Oftentimes, if you think about poverty, also think about mobility, because it's not only just a lack of resources, but a lack of mobility, meaning I can't get to work, therefore I'm not earning money, therefore I can't get to the doctor, get my medicines, get to appointments and other things that would help advance and move me along. And so transportation has been the #1 thing this community's talked about when we look at our needs and when we conduct community assessments, and that's why there's been groups advocating for public transportation and sidewalks and bicycle lanes and other alternative ways for folks to get around, so that everybody is afforded that equal opportunity to be mobile, because when you're mobile, you can be more successful and you can be connected to resources. So I would encourage those of you in the county to make your voice be heard, and in other municipalities where maybe the bus system's not going to be stopping or visiting, because in order for Alamance County to move forward as a whole, that system really needs to be comprehensive and complete. And right now it's just going to serve, a portion of our community, which is unfortunate, because we would like for it to serve everybody.
Anybody else? Do we have additional questions? Natalie?
Hi, I'm Natalie Janisella with the Times News. Tom, can you clarify that statistic about 95% of people you guys worked with being employed or looking for work or primary child caregivers? Is that just people you interviewed, or where is that number from?
Yeah, so that's national, and actually we've got it's a nice chance to give a plug to our website. So we have a website. If you type in, I think it's Voices of Welfare /blog. We'll figure that out. Hopefully it's on a piece of paper somewhere, but Googling it should bring it up. On that site, we unpack all those numbers and we source all those numbers, but they're national. So that's not the 52 folks that we talked to here. Those are national numbers. 84% is the number that you typically see for employed, looking for work, or disabled. After that, the numbers get a little squishier in terms of primary child care as filling in a big hole there. Disaffected workers, discouraged workers, that's another number that the economists have a hard time kind of tracking, but you take sort of this general estimate and try to fit that into, but all that will be sourced on the site.
And again, if you just go to a search engine, type Elon Voices Welfare, Dr. Mould has assembled a lot of interesting facts and statistics, as well as additional video clips and other profiles that are just right there at your fingertips. And this is Alamance County-based information. If additional questions.
April brought up something. I don't need a mic. I have a voice. April brought up something that struck me, and when she said poverty. Poverty is the reason for the need of welfare. What are we doing in Alamance County to eliminate poverty?
Great question.
So the question is, in case you couldn't hear her, is what are we doing in Alamance County to eliminate poverty, one of the root sources of the need for welfare?
That's a great question. There's
Well, so I'm going to just say one caveat, and then folks can actually answer that question straight out. But what's interesting about that is when we often talk about welfare, people will sometimes say, well, welfare is the problem, right? That it's the system. But no, welfare is the Band-Aid that's attempting to address the poverty. And so I'll just put my cards on the table. My interest in this project, I'm a folklorist, I study narrative. So I was interested in how people talk about and stigmatize basically poor folks. But welfare gets to be the boogeyman so often in these stories. And so we're sort of looking at what's the impact of stigma and stereotype of receiving public assistance. But you're exactly right. The much bigger, the elephant in the room is poverty. And luckily, we've got lots of folks up here who are working on that exact issue. So I will now be quiet. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I can just speak on behalf of Burlington Housing Authority, what we're doing for our residents, for those who choose to take advantage of our many programs, things varying from entrepreneurship classes to GED classes, nutrition classes. We have basically a holistic approach as we work with our families who choose to live in our public housing units. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to equip our residents with life skills so that they're better prepared to enter the workforce and care for their families while they're living with us.
Kim's charging up her answer.
I'm getting ready.
Done enough panels
Thank you
with
for
her.
that
When
question, Ms.
She
P.
pauses, there's
I'm pausing.
something good coming.
Allied Churches doesn't really do anything for poverty except we're a Band-Aid. We housed 51 people last night. We're sitting here talking about welfare. People are on the other end of that. What did Diane say? I needed it to get where I needed to get. Doesn't that move every single one of you in this room? What do we need to do to end poverty? We need to look at our community. What is our community doing? We can put someone on, we can house someone. And I think that Allied Churches does a good job about that. We have 96 shelter beds. I think that's an appalling number of shelter beds, don't you? Maybe we should have 50. What we need then is additional housing, more housing opportunities like Burlington Housing. Because you know what, they do take that holistic approach and they wrap someone around the elements that they need to be successful, not just put a roof over their head. If you've been out on the street or you've been in the shelter for a long time, someone else is telling you what to do. By the time you get your own place, you don't even know what to do anymore. So, yeah, we have 51 people that are spending the night and they're calling Allied Churches home. And we have a food pantry. We feed 2,000 people coming to the shelter to get food because there's not a grocery store near Allied Churches. Instead, there's a Dollar General. Well, I don't know about you, but shopping at the Dollar General is kind of expensive. So, and it's not healthy. Yeah, leave it to April for the healthy part of that. And Miss P, she does emergency assistance. We have a homeless commission here in Alamance County. And a startling fact that was told to us 1 week ago was on that day, 242 homes, the water was being turned off in their homes. You know what happens when the water's turned off in your home? It now becomes unfit for human habitation. Where are you going then? Most of us in this room have a safety net. What are we doing about poverty? How do we help someone with a safety net? I'm gonna call my sister, I'm gonna call my brother, I'm gonna call April, I'm gonna call, my mom. I'm calling someone because I have someone to call. What happens when you don't have someone to call? Then where do you go? And those are some of the things that we have to look at. We listen to people come to the shelter all of the time because people say, oh, they just got to get a job. Get a job? You know what? When people come back to the shelter, and I have half my staff sitting down here, and you know what? When someone comes back, it's all we can do to jump up and down and says, I got a job. And I'm working at one of those, and then they tell us one of those fast food restaurants or one of those big box convenience stores. $8 an hour. Do you know how much it costs to live? How much you need to make per hour to afford a one-bedroom apartment in Burlington or Alamance County? $10.42. How do you get excited when someone says, I got a job at $8 an hour? It's like, yeah, we're never going to see you because you need to work 80 hours a week in order to afford that place. And that's just to pay rent. When are we as a community going to look at, wow, maybe we could raise the minimum wage here? Maybe we could get transportation. You know, it's things like that, things that we take advantage of. People can't afford to live here. And they keep coming to the shelter. And so let me tell you, yeah, please help support the shelter so that they can stay in the shelter, because guess what? Nikki doesn't have enough beds for us. When are we going to talk to some of our landlords who are making tons of money, charging as much rent as they possibly can, when all we need them to do is take 2 or 3 of those apartments and make it a reasonable rent? Make all the money you need to. That's fantastic, because we all need to pay rent. We all need to pay a mortgage. But how about making 2 or 3 of those apartments affordable for someone? Have you seen some of the affordable housing we have here in Alamance County? It's appalling. None of us would want to walk in there. Well, let's talk about quality affordable housing once and see what that looks like. Everybody deserves that. So those are some of the things that I think that we all can do. Partner with these agencies. Help us house people. Help us help people stand on their own 2 feet. Most people don't want to be on welfare. Most people don't want assistance. They want to take care of themselves and their family. You do. Why do we think that other people don't?
So one thing I'd like to add, as far as Open Door Clinic, again, I guess it could be considered a Band-Aid, but you know, we are there to get people healthy and keep them healthy. And if they're healthy, then they are able to work.
And I'll throw out, there are agencies like the Women's Resource Center that are working with women in particular and families to do job training, to give them some of those life skills that, for whatever reason, going through a divorce, having kids early, and then perhaps being left holding the bag and the children and trying to raise them, and not having some of those job skills or a resume that looks particularly good to get a job in this economy. So there are agencies that are trying to give those kinds of skills to folks to try to get that job, and not the Burger King job, but the job that perhaps does pay a living wage, but that's far out of reach. I would say one of the biggest things that we heard from a lot of the folks we talked to in terms of trying to address this issue is the kind of the balancing act that happens if you're receiving public assistance and then you start actually making a little more money at work. So instead of being able to save some of that to actually get out of poverty, oftentimes your benefits get reduced. And so there's this kind of status quo. Even though you're working harder and you're making moves up, you're not actually bringing home more money. And that's a problem I think BHA maybe can speak to a little bit, of these programs where people who are working can actually put money in a bank and it gets matched, so that saving money and getting out of that cycle actually becomes a reality.
And Tom is speaking about our family self-sufficiency program, which is something that HUD boasts as the nation's best asset building program. It's a program where our residents who choose work with a case manager to identify goals they like to accomplish. If they meet those goals, then they would graduate from our program, but the program requires that they do become employed. And once they become employed, if they qualify, a portion of the money that they pay in for rent goes into a savings account. And if they complete the program successfully, then they get all of that savings back to them. that's, I don't know about you guys, but your mortgage company isn't giving you your money back, and folks who are renting, your landlord's not giving you your money back because you got your bachelor's degree or you finish your GED classes. But with the Housing Authority, this Family Self-Sufficiency Program, this program provides that boost that families need. People who graduate have moved out of public housing and purchased homes. They built habitat houses. So this is, an asset building program for residents who choose to participate.
We at DSS provide many services to many different people. Most people are not choosing to come into our building to apply for services. It's because they're in a crisis. They have a need. This is a bigger issue than any of our agencies. We need the community involved. We need people and organizations to take people under their wing almost and help them build the skills that they've never had that they need to be so self-sufficient in the long term.
So from United Way's perspective, we're really proud and honored to be able to partner with everyone who's up here and or fund a lot of these programs. Investing in the community is really the #1 way we can solve this problem, because if you hear a theme, someone's hungry, you're giving them food. Someone needs housing, you're helping them with housing. Tracy, someone's coming to you for medical care, you're helping them with that. But when somebody's having trouble making ends meet, are we giving folks money or the tools to get that money through job training, through education? So United Way looks at it as a big systematic approach. We have to look at policies. We have to look at our environment and the programs that are working and invest those dollars and duplicate those. Are we ensuring that these opportunities are available in other neighborhoods and other places so that we can eventually make change over time? But it doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. We also have to pay attention to what's in the news. We also have to pay attention to elections and decisions that are being made that oftentimes affect us in our work, but we don't maybe always follow that. But certainly it's a tough question. I'm glad you asked it. I don't think we were quite ready for it yet, but we're trying our best.
I think just
And I know Ms. P and I have the privilege of working together, and I'm pretty sure when she was asking that question, she wasn't asking us. So I think that the question to everybody sitting in this room is exactly what is it that you're doing? I mean, you're sitting in this room and we're listening and are listening, but what are you doing to help us end poverty and build our community? And I think that that's, okay, hey, write a check to Allied Churches. There you go. But really, it's bigger than that. So I think the question really is what are you doing? We need the help, but what are you doing?
We have another question. Thank you all.
Well, I'm a senior citizen of 72 years old who has worked all of my life as a lab analyst, as a school teacher, and here I am retired, living right around the corner here at this Alamance Hotel that I just moved into 3 weeks ago, or else I would have been homeless. But I wonder what kind of a society, this is a national problem, this isn't an Alamance County problem, but I wonder what kind of community in general do we have nationally that doesn't address the real problem? And the real problem is workers are not earning any money anymore. $10 an hour cannot take you out of poverty. Landlords, rent keeps going up, food keeps going up, but wages keep going down. And here I am, have worked all of my life. I am a welfare recipient at last because I retired and my little Social Security check doesn't quite make ends meet, so I get SSI. So I decide I'm gonna go to work because I have to supplement this income so I could at least stay in my car. So I go to work, and what happens? I get penalized. I can't make the money because then the SSI is decreased. And then now I can't work because the head gasket on the car blew, and now I can't even use a car. So now I can't even get to work. I can't get out of this problem. And now I live around the corner here and there's no bus transportation. So I'm going crazy because I feel trapped. I can't get to the doctor. I can't get to a job. I can't get anywhere. It is a national problem. And $10 an hour will not take us out of this mess. Think about that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody would like to
One thing
respond?
that I would like to say, just from a personal experience, my mother is in the exact same situation as this lady here, and she actually moved in with myself and my family 2 years ago. Same situation. She was 68 years old. My stepfather passed away several years ago. She was not able to make ends meet. 68, working full time. You know, worked all of her life, everything, and she just was not able to do it. And so, you know, she was fortunate enough to have us where we had the space for her to move in with us, and, you know, we're taking care of her. So that's very common with, you know, the seniors.
Thank you. Next question.
I'd frame welfare theologically as a pastor. In most major religions, it goes back to thriving, not surviving, faring well. So in the next 10 months and 3 weeks, we're going to hear a lot about cutting taxes and about entitlement programs. But how does a citizen in Alamance County access what's the true need, how many people are served, and how economically and efficiently are public dollars invested in the issues of welfare and helping our neighbors through their times? Because what I'm hearing in the world around me isn't that what we're doing is working. What I'm hearing is waste, fraud, and abuse. And how do we dispel some of that information with fact?
So that is exactly the heart of the project that we all gathered together back in 2011 to try to tackle. Because the dominant narrative was that welfare is rife with fraud, that if you had to pick a sort of the poster child of somebody receiving public assistance, it was somebody who was selling their food stamps, cheating the government out of various kinds of benefits unfairly. And so one of the things that we're trying to do, at least, is to change that narrative. Narratives matter. You can quote statistics and you can come up with some really tight reasoned arguments, but people hear stories and they remember stories. Details, concrete people's names and faces, those lodge in our heads. Unfortunately, what we know about how we remember stories is it's the negative story that we remember far more often than the positive story. So 100 of these images up here is going to count for one welfare legend. And the problem is that welfare legend is going to be remembered and then shared again and again and again. So what can we do in this debate? At least locally, we can start telling these stories we know are actual people, and be a little more hesitant about the stories that we're hearing from a friend of a friend. I think that's a start.
Speaking of positive stories, we have some more positive stories on the second audio clip, if that's possible to play. Does anybody else want to sort of take a shot at that question about how do we account for accountability in welfare spending? I'm sure all of your agencies have some sort of accounting protocol for that.
We do at DSS. We administer many programs, whether it's Medicaid, food nutrition services, the check, as people hear it called. We don't just take somebody's statement in most instances as to what is going on in that family. We have to verify information. We have a fraud investigator that takes on all those cases where people believe that there is fraud occurring in different cases. I think you will always have some of those cases, but when you look at the big picture, most people are telling the truth. They're getting the benefits because they need them and they can't survive without them.
As the executive director of a fairly large nonprofit here in Alamance County, one of the things that we've had to work diligently on is we have a responsibility to be a good steward of the dollars that are given to us, and any nonprofit in this community has that responsibility. We do our best to be as transparent as we can with those dollars. We're fortunate enough to be funded by the United Way. I think the United Way of Alamance County does a fantastic job of vetting, financially vetting many of the nonprofits in this community. Many of us go to the United Way for financial support. So where can you look? Heck, check with the United Way about any organization that you're thinking of supporting. That's the first place I would go. You know, if you're thinking about allied churches, go to our website. Our financials are on our website. We're audited every year, as a matter of fact. Our auditor's here in the room, aren't you, Marty? So we have that responsibility. We have a responsibility as stewards to spend that money wisely. We have a responsibility to the stakeholders, and we have a responsibility to the people that we serve. So I think that, go to GuideStar. They have all kinds of information on all kinds of nonprofits, including allied churches. So there are a number of places that you can go. If an organization doesn't show you their financials, I'd be suspect. So, there's a lot of those mechanisms out there as well.
So return to this notion about stories and how they matter. I think our second audio clip is available now.
As I had a heart attack about 3 years ago, and I hadn't been able to work since. Plus, I have a lot of mental issues going on, and just a lot of things going on. Because I have asthma, emphysema, COPD. Plus, I have congestive heart failure. I have social anxiety, bipolar, severe depression. So I have a ton of stuff against me right now.
Right now, I'm broke. I don't have stuff to buy to clean my house. I don't have soap powder to wash my kids' clothes with. I have to struggle. I mean, school's starting up. I don't have money to buy my kids clothes for school this year. I mean, I applied, so they give us a little bit of clothes, and the clothes they give my daughter, they're too small.
Like I said, I've just had trouble keeping employment because of my medical conditions, but I've gotten back on my medications. I'm bipolar, and I have some OCD and some post-traumatic stress syndrome and a few other things going on.
I wanted to start some kind of services on my own to assist the disabled and the homebound. But they offered me a job at Alamance County Community Services. The first job I couldn't do because I had to stand, and that was my health issue, was my legs. So their director said, I like your resume and I'm going to hold on to it. 3 weeks later, they called me to come in and be their receptionist. And this is when I got introduced to really helping the people in the community.
Hi, thank you all for coming to share your expertise. I was thinking that as a society, we often fall into this kind of lazy way of thinking that assumes that there will always be poverty and that there will always be the big guys and the little guys. And I was wondering, how do we create a culture shift and challenge that assumption?
Wow.
That's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, that's exactly what we need to do.
When people think millennials aren't hopeful, questions like that come up to prove them wrong.
Well, for Burlington Housing, we've decided to offer more than just housing. Most apartment complexes don't care if you don't have your GED. They don't care if you want to start your own business. They just want their rent paid. And so we've become a non-traditional housing provider, going after HUD grants and other community grants in order to provide our residents with programs and services that most wouldn't get living somewhere else.
Well, again, at United Way, we're often thinking big picture, right? And so what better way to engage the community than volunteerism? And if a community supports itself and helps itself and is engaged and knows these agencies and the issues that they're up against, maybe they'll be more likely to help allied churches when they need something. So we've started a new website called Volunteer Alamance, which is basically a virtual website that will match you up with your interests with the needs of agencies, just like everyone up here today. And that's one way to get started. It doesn't solve the problem, but it at least begins the conversation. So we're hoping more and more people will register. It's brand new. It's softly launched over the holidays, but we're hoping with the new year that perhaps more and more volunteers will register and more agencies will post their needs so that we can begin to solve those problems together.
One of the things that I tell a lot of people is get outside of the bubble. If you're in the bubble, you know, you live in a nice little neighborhood and you have a job and, you know, everything's wonderful in your bubble, you don't realize what's going on outside. So, you know, get educated and get out in the community and see what's going on. And I think that's a good way to start helping.
It's idealistic, but you know, trying to break down the us versus them, it seems sometimes ingrained in our DNA that we want to circle the wagons, but 63% to 64%, again, it's on the website, of people at some point in their lives in the United States will need public assistance. So it really is us. A lot of the aid providers that we interviewed during this project as well said, you know what? I was on the other side of that desk a year ago, or I could be on the other side of that desk next year. And I think if we can kind of keep that in mind, even if, you know, we've got lots of safety nets, or at least we think we do, divorce sneaks up on us, major illnesses sneak up on us. And so I think if we can switch that mindset a little bit, maybe we can start getting a little closer to the ideal that you're describing.
And break the stereotype, that's huge.
Come sit in the lobby and just see who's coming through the doors. It's you and me. It's not them.
Exactly. When I had to go over to DSS, this was about 15 years ago, and it was humiliating for me. But talking to our patients, most of them are humiliated to have to come to us, and they're no different than I am. They're no different than you are. They're no different than anybody else that's living in Alamance County.
So I have a question. How many of you have seen Star Wars? Seriously, how many of you have seen Star Wars? Yeah, I know, it's kind of cool.
No Star Wars, April?
No Star Wars? I haven't seen it yet either. So there's, work with me, Caitlin. There's millions of people that have seen Star Wars, right? And they've raised, I mean, they're like catastrophic in the amount of money that they've made, like $1 billion or $2 billion or whatever it is. It's a lot of money. Because a whole bunch of people went to see a movie. A whole bunch of people went to see a movie. Do you know that that amount of money would end homelessness in the entire world? Because a whole bunch of people went to see a movie. So it is that mind shift. If we don't believe that we can end it, it isn't going to happen. At Allied Churches, and the reason that people are sitting from Allied Churches here today is because, you know what, they don't see a ceiling. Does that work? Can we house this person? No, okay, let's try this. Okay, let's try this. If we see a ceiling, it isn't going to happen. We can go to a movie and we can raise a ton of money. But where is our priority? Where are our priorities? And we can really, really make a difference. And it isn't about, I mean, it would be nice to raise an awful lot of money. But it is about, and what all of us do here, and what we're suggesting that you do is relationship. It's about a relationship. It's about understanding that people actually matter. And we're trying to tell you about Lisa and Miss P and Paul and Kathy. And these people touch our lives every single day, and we forget that. How many of us go to a restaurant? How many of us have gone out to eat? Yeah, and then we get that bill and we're going, gee, I wonder how much of a tip I should make. Well, it's $7, 10% of that is 70 cents. Okay, I'll give him 70 cents. Really? Really? 70 cents? And that person is serving you. And it is about the wages. It's about the wages. Look at the jobs that we pay the lowest in. Look at the CNAs and the people that are running nursing homes. The person that's taking care of our most prized and precious family members aren't even making enough money to pay the rent. There's nothing worse than having someone taking care of one of your family members saying, hey, every time I get paid, I think of you. Really, why? Well, because you run the food pantry. Wow. And it's those kinds of things. It's about a relationship. We run into these people every single day, and their lives are affected. And we can do something about it. We're all going to Star Wars. We're going to Furious 7. We're going to all of those movies. Well, look at our community, and where can we invest the money? And I don't care where you invest. I mean, I do care, but, look at the United Way. Go to the United Way. Gosh, they can help point you in the right direction, whether it's homelessness or food or transportation. They got the people for you. But I can tell you, those of us up here, we need you. We need you to stand up and do something. We're already doing it. My guys are tired. And they do it every day because of the love that they have in their heart. And you guys, I'm pretty sure, are here for the same reason. Well, call the United Way. Go to volunteer alamance.org. I'm trying to do that pitch for you. Because it makes a difference. We're not asking you to be Mother Teresa or Albert Schweitzer. It would be nice if we all were, but you know what? We can't. We can't. But every single one of us can do one little thing. One little thing. Even if it's to smile at someone. Instead of seeing someone that's homeless, instead of crossing the street because, oh my God, they're going to ask me for $1. How about walk by and say hi? It's probably the best thing that's going to happen to them that day. And we can do that. So that's where the cultural shift starts. It's in our hearts, and it's in that relationship that we can build. Because the money part is easy, because we're still going to go to Star Wars.
I think we have 3 additional questions in the front.
Good evening. My name is Kendall McBroom, a resident of Burlington, North Carolina. This comes from one, as currently the director of student ministries in a ministerial role, as well as one that has worked in social services, but in a different city in Hampton, Virginia, as a child support services. And so this is dealing with our youth, particularly our children. In what ways can we as a county and a community eliminate poverty and welfare from negatively affecting the development of our youth? I.e., we have a school in the city, Andrews, which is essentially 100% free or reduced lunch, which means that there are a lot of other issues that could be coming about. So what can we do as the community to ensure that they are offered the same opportunities, the same opportunity for development as those that might go to Smith or Turntine or other schools?
I do want to say I have been talking a lot to the superintendent, Dr. Harrison, and he also spoke at community council. And my son goes to Smith, and he's in the SPLASH program, so they had a meeting the other night, and I went up to him and I thanked him because one of the things that he said at community council that really stuck out to me is that every single child should have the same opportunity. It doesn't matter what school they go to. It doesn't matter their background. And he is really dedicated to seeing that happen.
At Burlington Housing Authority, we are working very hard to stop the cycle of poverty, particularly generational poverty within our families. We have several after-school programs for our youth. We have a preschool program funded through United Way. So we use those programs to teach our kids the importance of education, to expose them to cultural activities, to expose them to higher education opportunities and also vocational opportunities. So that's what we're doing specifically at the Housing Authority. We make that available for every child who's at least 3 years old to participate in our after-school or preschool programs.
And I think another thing the community can do is you don't have to have children in the school system to assist the school system. You can go read with a child. You can go be their lunch buddy. I think that's important because you don't know what they're going home to that night. And, you know, you may be that mentor that changes that child's life for the future.
And one thing I'd like to add is go to the school board meetings. That is so important. And you do not even have to be a parent to go, but the community really needs to get more involved in going to school board meetings, city council meetings, county commissioner meetings, and just be a voice, because we can sit in our homes all day and gripe about how things are, but we have to be an advocate. We have to get up, go to these meetings and speak.
I'm a business. I run a business here in Alamance County. And when I got to Allied Churches, over half our staff was making less than what it costs to afford a one-bedroom apartment in Alamance County. We work every single day to house people because they're homeless. 25% of the people that are living in our shelter have jobs. It wasn't until 6 months ago that we were able to raise our own salaries in our own organization so that every single person at Allied Churches can afford a one-bedroom apartment. And we're still busy, and we're still open. And I will disagree with you passionately, because those people that are sitting right next to you deserve to make enough money to put food on the table for their own kids, to pay their own rent, take care of their own lives. And Allied Churches is still here today. And as far as the poor will always be with us, you're darn right they will be, because we are mandated, we are called by Jesus to put ourselves in relationship with the poor. We're not supposed to get away from them. We are supposed to be with them. We are supposed to lock arms with them and move forward as one solid, strong, thriving community. As long as we leave people behind, we are not going anywhere.
We have an additional...
Oh, I was just going to add quickly, I think obviously that economic argument needs a lot of conversation and a lot of work. One thing that I don't think we distinguish between enough, and I think Kim said it nicely, but is between luxury items, basic needs. You know, this idea that if we pay people a living wage, everything goes skyrocketing. That is not how the economy works, and it doesn't have to be how the economy works. Parts of things. And so, should I be able to buy a t-shirt for $1? No, I shouldn't. And I don't need 75 t-shirts, though I can buy them for $1. So if we can get that price range, we used to have an economy where a single income could support a family of 4. We don't now. We have the largest gap between the wealthy and the poor in the country's history right now. And so I'm not convinced that saying, well, we're all being duped is really helping us, because there's no solution at the end of that. And there is one if we grant people those basic human rights that say, no, a living wage to pay for those basics, and then, yeah, maybe the really big large screen TV is outside your range where it's not right now, but that's okay.
We have an additional... Thank you all for your comments as well. We have an additional clip. We're almost out of time. Hopefully that final clip will offer some closure to today's evening.
I don't want to be on welfare. Yeah. You know, it's my goal to cut out the food stamps and, you know, to pay my own way. You know, I never really chose to be. I don't guess anybody does, but I'm ready to do my own thing.
I would like to find a place I can afford. I mean, I can afford and take care of my kids too without people coming in my house and checking how I keep my house clean and just being nosy.
People that have had to live in public housing. They automatically think if you live in public housing, then that's nothing to you. You're dangerous, and that's not so. We just, people that live in public housing are just having a hard time financially, that's all. Good, wonderful people in here. And since I've been here, I've met some extraordinary people that I'm just amazed has to live in public housing.
Right.
And it's all due to some bad decisions they made in their life and all. But I have really seen some very intelligent, very kind and loving people, that goes out of their way to help another person.
Right.
The outside world needs to look in here and see that.
I feel that this is where God intended for me to be. He just let me go out into the world and do the things I wanted to do, and to bring me back where he knew where I was supposed to be. And so now I say, this is my ministry. I listen, and I know when a person has a story to tell me. And to get those hugs, to get those tears, because they are tears of joy, tears of relief that I'm getting this bill paid. That's my ministry. That puts a smile on my face, sometimes tears in my eyes.
Thank you. Now we are virtually out of time, but if you will, as panelists, what's one thing we should take away from this? If you can say it in sort of 30 seconds or less.
If I could just say something in closing that I think is really important, because I think it's wonderful there are so many people here tonight, and I want to make sure that we share a resource, because there could be many reasons why you're here tonight. 211 is a number that you can call if you find yourself in one of these situations. That's a number you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's powered by United Way. That will connect you with a counselor. The service is available in English and Spanish, and they have a list of all the resources, all the agencies that are up here today, and they will get you in touch with the right one to connect you with the needs that you need. And oftentimes our office gets calls when folks don't know where else to call, and that's the easiest number, 211. So I'd be remiss if I didn't get the chance to mention that in case there's someone who needs to call.
Thank you. So what's one takeaway that we're missing? It's sort of final, sort of 30 seconds. What did we miss here?
I'm not sure about missing anything. I think it's just more about reiterating is get involved.
And I'll say, you've heard financial pleas already. Yes, put money forward, but here's something that's cheap and easy. In fact, it's so cheap it's free. Is tell those stories, think carefully about the other stories that you're hearing, be critical of all of them. Explore, get to know your neighbors, many of whom have not told you because the stigma is still so strong. Talk to them, make them feel okay about getting the assistance they need so that we can, in fact, break some of the generational poverty we're talking about tonight.
Vote.
I think prayer, just pray. We need to pray for each other.
I'll sing. I'm just kidding. And I just like for folks to understand that just because people are living in poverty or just because they receive welfare, it doesn't mean that they're unworthy of a good life. It's not something they did. It's not an issue that they're having. People struggle. Our residents, they still want a good life. They want their kids to go to a good school. They want to be able to provide for their families, just like many of you do. Just because their zip code is different or because they live in East Burlington, it doesn't make them less of a citizen. It doesn't make them less worthy to live a good life.
And I would just say, don't judge, and there's probably more things in common that you have with others than not in common, and so just be open-minded to everyone's story and smile and talk to others, because until you talk to them, you won't hear their story.
I wish that we had hours to continue this conversation, but unfortunately our time has drawn to a close now. At the, outside in the snack area in the front, we will have some sort of refreshment. There's opportunity to have conversation with our panelists. You can continue these discussions. A lot of folks say it's impossible to have productive conversations on controversial issues in the United States. It's impossible to cover all of an issue in an hour, but we did a pretty good job here, I think, starting that. Thank you to the Burlington Times-News and to Madison Taylor for making this possible. Tonight's event was also sponsored by the Voices of Welfare Project, which is part of PERCS, which is Elon's program for ethnographic research and community studies. If you'd like more information about these initiatives, Dr. Mould here would be happy to tell you more. One key announcement going forward, this upcoming Tuesday at 7 p.m. in Mosley, we will be having another panel along these same lines, and this is going to be focused on economic issues related to race in Alamance County and the United States. So this is Tuesday in McKinnon Hall in Mosley Center at Elon at 7 p.m. You can follow the Times News for more information about this. We hope to see many of you there. Thank you again for coming tonight.